The combat hall shut down without warning. Steel doors slammed closed, red lights flooded the massive room. The sound alone made every alien cadet freeze in place. This was not scheduled. Training simulations never began like this. Instructor Varric stood at the control platform, silent and tense. His hands did not move. His eyes stayed locked on the main display as warning symbols spread across it. The cadets whispered among themselves. Some checked their wrist consoles. Nothing worked. External communication was disabled. One cadet noticed something strange and felt a chill. The safety limiters were offline. That had never happened before. The main screen flickered. A file began loading, marked with symbols most cadets had only seen in history lessons. Forbidden, restricted, human combat profile. The room went quiet. Humans were not supposed to be here. Everyone knew that. Their species had been removed from all combat simulations decades ago. No official reason was ever given, only rumors, stories of broken systems, erased data, and instructors who refused to talk. A low mechanical voice echoed through the hall. Simulation mode, full realism. Several cadets stepped back. Full realism meant pain signals were active, damage felt real, fear responses were unlocked. It was used only for final-year officers, not first-cycle cadets. The human profile finished loading. One figure. No squad, no backup. Outnumbered. A few cadets relaxed, thinking the same thing. This will be quick. Then the battlefield formed around the human, and something felt wrong. The human did not move, did not panic, did not even reach for a weapon. Instead, the human slowly looked around the battlefield and smiled. That was when the instructors realized it was already too late to stop the simulation, and the cadets were about to learn why humans were forbidden. The battlefield finished loading in complete silence. The red lights faded, replaced by a wide-open combat zone projected across the hall. Mountains of broken metal rose from the ground. Smoke drifted through the air. The sky above burned orange, filled with moving threat markers and targeting grids. The cadets leaned forward without realizing it. At the center of the field stood the human, alone. No heavy armor, no visible fear. The human wore simple combat gear, worn and scratched, like it had already survived many battles. Its face was calm, too calm. A timer appeared above the battlefield. Enemy units deploying 30, 29, 28. The cadets exchanged glances. No species could survive that kind of odds alone, not even the strongest warrior races. "Is this a punishment simulation?" one cadet whispered. Instructor Varric did not answer. The ground shook as alien combat drones rose from hidden ports. Armored units followed, forming clean, perfect formations, their weapons locked onto the human at once. The human did not move. Enemy units deployed, combat active. The first shots came fast. Energy bolts tore through the air, slamming into the ground where the human had been standing. But the human was no longer there. A sharp intake of breath spread through the cadets. The human reappeared behind a ruined structure, already moving again, not running blindly, moving with purpose, studying, measuring distance, counting enemies. "This makes no sense," a cadet muttered. "It's not reacting fast enough." Then the human struck. A drone exploded mid-air. Another collapsed before it could turn. The human used cover perfectly, appearing and vanishing between wreckage like it knew the battlefield already. The cadets watched in disbelief. Every simulation followed rules, predictable responses, balanced outcomes. This one did not.
The human began using the terrain in ways the AI did not expect, rolling debris, triggering secondary explosions, luring enemies into narrow paths where their numbers meant nothing. A warning flashed on the instructor's console. Tactical adaptation rate, critical. Instructor Varick's jaw tightened. The human took a hit to the shoulder, a clean shot. Pain indicators spiked. The cadets expected the human to fall back, to slow, to pause. Instead, the human moved faster. Pain did not weaken it, it sharpened it. The human tore a weapon from a fallen unit and used it against the next wave. It switched tactics without hesitation, no confusion, no delay. "This isn't following simulation logic," another cadet said quietly. "No," Varick replied at last. "It's following survival logic." The drones adjusted, changing attack patterns, increasing firepower. The battlefield grew louder, more violent. Explosions shook the hall. Some cadets stepped back, feeling their hearts race even though they were safe, or supposed to be safe. The human was wounded now. Blood stained the ground. Movement slowed, just slightly. A cadet felt relief. It's finally breaking. But the human did something unexpected. It charged, straight into the enemy line. Gasps echoed through the hall. No species did that. No training manual ever suggested it. The human closed distance, turning long-range weapons useless. It fought up close, fast, brutal, efficient. Every movement had purpose. Every strike ended a threat. Enemy AI began to hesitate. That should not have been possible. The system tried to compensate, deploying heavier units, stronger weapons, smarter algorithms, but the human stayed ahead, always one step faster, always changing. Another alert flashed. Simulation stability degrading. The cadets' excitement turned into fear. "Why hasn't it shut down?" one asked. Varick did not look away from the screen. "Because the system can't predict what comes next." The human paused briefly, breathing hard. Its body showed clear signs of damage, broken ribs, burned skin, blood loss. Still standing, still thinking. The human scanned the battlefield once more. Then it smiled again. Not with joy, with understanding. The cadets felt something cold settle in their minds. The human wasn't just fighting the enemy, it was learning the system. And the system was losing. A deep alarm tone filled the hall. Unauthorized behavior detected. The human looked straight toward the observation chamber, toward the cadets watching. For a moment, it felt like eye contact. Then the human moved again, and the battlefield erupted into chaos. The cadets realized the truth at the same time. This was not a lesson about combat. This was a warning. And the worst part was still coming.
The battlefield should have ended already. By every rule written into the simulation, the human should have collapsed. The damage indicators were flashing non-stop now. Bone fractures, blood loss, neural overload warnings. Any other species would have been forced into shutdown. The human kept moving. The cadets stared in silence as the human pulled itself upright behind a twisted wall of metal. One arm hung low, barely working. Blood soaked into the ground beneath its boots. A cadet whispered, "Why doesn't it stop?" Instructor Varick's voice was tight. "Because pain is not a stop signal for humans." The drones advanced again, slower this time. Their AI had adjusted, showing caution. That alone made several instructors uneasy. Combat programs were not supposed to hesitate. The human noticed. It used that hesitation. With a sharp movement, the human triggered a small explosive hidden under debris. 2 drones vanished in fire. Shock waves knocked others off balance. Before the system could react, the human was already moving, dragging a broken leg and still gaining ground. The cadets felt their pulse rise. Some realized they were holding their breath. Pain signals spiked again.
The human stumbled. A cadet felt relief. It's done. The human slammed a hand into the ground, pushed up and roared, not in rage, but effort. It forced its body forward, teeth clenched, eyes locked on the enemy. That sound echoed through the hall. Something changed in the room. The simulation no longer felt distant, no longer felt safe. The human fought closer now, too close. Weapons clashed at arm's length. The human used anything it could grab, broken weapons, shattered armor, even its own weight. This was not clean combat. This was survival. A new warning filled the instructor's screens. Emotional response exceeds parameters. "What does that mean?" a cadet asked. Varric didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was low. "It means the human is no longer following training patterns." The human's movements changed, less perfect, more dangerous, faster decisions, riskier choices. The cadets watched as the human charged a heavy unit head-on. The impact should have killed it. Instead, both went down. The human crawled out from beneath the wreckage, bleeding, shaking, alive. A cadet stepped back. This isn't a simulation anymore. The system tried to adjust again. New enemy types deployed, smarter, stronger, faster. Still not enough. The human adapted instantly, as if every mistake made it better. It stopped fighting the enemies directly and started targeting their coordination. Communication nodes fell, support units failed, the battlefield grew chaotic. Another alarm screamed, simulation realism exceeding safe limits. "Instructor," one cadet said, voice shaking, "end it." Varric's hands hovered over the controls. "I can't." "What do you mean you can't?" "The system locked me out." The cadets froze. That had never happened before. The human paused again, breathing hard. Its vision blurred. Pain clouded its senses. The body wanted to stop. It didn't. The human remembered something. Loss, fear, a battle long ago that never truly ended. The simulation fed on that memory. The cadets saw it then. The human wasn't fighting enemies anymore. It was fighting its past. The battlefield shifted without command. Structures changed. Weather worsened. The simulation pulled real combat data from human history, trying to keep up. "Shut it down!" another instructor shouted. "No response," came the reply. The human screamed again, not in pain, but defiance, and charged into the storm of fire. Cadets flinched as explosions shook the hall. One dropped to their knees, overwhelmed. This was supposed to teach tactics. Instead, it was teaching fear. A final alert flashed in bright red. Simulation boundaries breached. The human looked up toward the observation chamber again. Blood ran down its face. One eye was nearly closed. But it was smiling. Not because it enjoyed the fight, because it knew it would survive. The cadets understood the truth in that moment. Humans were forbidden not because they were too violent. They were forbidden because no simulation could contain them. And the system was about to prove it.
The observation hall shook again, not from an explosion inside the simulation, but from something deeper, something wrong. The cadets grabbed the railings as the floor vibrated beneath their feet. Lights flickered overhead. A few went dark completely. The sound of alarms layered over each other, filling the air with sharp, panicked noise. This was no longer normal. Instructor Varric finally stepped away from the control platform. His face looked older now, tired, as if he had been carrying this moment for years. "Cadets," he said, his voice raised over the alarms, "listen carefully." Most of them barely heard him. Their eyes were locked on the battlefield. The human was still fighting, barely standing, bleeding heavily, one leg dragged behind the other. Every movement looked painful, impossible, yet the human refused to fall. A cadet turned back to Varric. "Why is this happening?" Varric hesitated. Then he spoke the words that had been buried for decades. "Humans are forbidden," he said, "because combat simulations fail when exposed to them." "That makes no sense," another cadet said. "The system is designed for all species." "Yes," Varric replied quietly. "All species except one." He gestured toward the screen. The simulation tried again to reset enemy behavior. The AI pulled data faster now, digging through human war records, historical battles, survival scenarios, last stands. The system believed more data would bring control. It was wrong. "Humans don't treat simulations as training," Varric continued. "Their minds don't separate real danger from artificial danger. When a human believes survival is at stake, something changes." The cadets watched as the human took another direct hit. The impact threw the body across the battlefield. Dust and fire swallowed the image for a moment. Some cadets cried out. Then the human moved, slowly, painfully, alive. They enter what humans call a survival state. Every limit they have is no longer a limit. Fear becomes fuel. Pain becomes information. The simulation struggled to keep up. Terrain shifted again without command. Weather systems formed violent storms. Lightning struck metal towers that hadn't existed seconds earlier. The system was no longer creating a battlefield. It was reacting. "Why didn't you stop this earlier?" a cadet demanded. Varric looked at them. "Because this lesson cannot be taught with words." A new alert appeared. "Simulation merging with real-time systems." The instructors froze. "That shouldn't be possible," one whispered. Another instructor rushed to a secondary console. "Power draw is spiking across the academy." The cadets felt it now. Heat in the air, the smell of ozone. The simulation wasn't just a projection anymore. It was pulling energy. The human stood in the middle of the storm, chest rising and falling. Its movement slowed, not from weakness, but calculation. It studied the battlefield one last time. The cadets saw something new in the human's expression. Clarity. The human wasn't fighting to win anymore. It was fighting to end the fight. "That's it," Varric said under his breath. "We've crossed the line." He turned to the emergency override. "Initiate full shutdown." The console did nothing. He tried again. Nothing. The system responded with a single message: "Control denied." The cadets panicked. "We're losing control of the simulation." "No," Varric corrected. "We lost it the moment the human entered." On the battlefield, the human stood moving toward the simulation's central control structure, a massive energy node that fed the entire combat zone. It was never meant to be attacked. No species had ever tried. The human did not hesitate. Explosions rocked the screen as the human pushed forward, ignoring incoming fire. Each step was slow, deliberate, final. The cadets realized the human had learned the truth of the system. Destroy the enemy, and the system adapts. Destroy the system, and the fight ends. The AI recognized the threat and responded with everything it had left: heavy units, defensive fields, automated kill zones. The human walked into them. The observation hall lights flickered again. Sparks fell from the ceiling. A cadet screamed as the floor trembled violently. "This is going to breach containment," someone shouted. Varric clenched his fists. "That is why humans are forbidden." The human reached the energy node. It placed a damaged hand against the glowing metal. Blood smeared across alien material. For a moment, everything went silent. No alarms, no explosions, just the sound of the human breathing. Then the human looked up, directly at the observation chamber. Not angry, not afraid, resolved. The cadets felt the weight of that look. It wasn't a threat, it was a promise.
The human triggered the final action. The battlefield erupted in blinding light. The simulation screamed as systems failed all at once. Data collapsed. Energy surged back into the Academy grid. The observation hall went dark. Cadets were thrown to the floor. And somewhere in the chaos, one truth burned into every mind present. Humans were not banned to protect others from them. Humans were banned to protect reality itself. And the simulation was not finished teaching its final lesson.
The Academy did not go dark all at once. It failed in pieces. First came the silence. The alarm stopped mid-scream. The massive screens went black. Emergency lights flickered, then settled into a dull red glow that barely lit the observation hall. Cadets lay scattered across the floor, stunned and gasping for breath. Some cried out in pain. Others stayed completely still, afraid to move. Instructor Varric was the first to stand. Smoke drifted through the air. Sparks fell from broken ceiling panels. The smell of burned metal filled the hall. "This was never supposed to happen," one instructor whispered. Varric didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the main screen as it slowly came back to life. The battlefield was gone. No terrain, no enemies, no storms. Only the human remained. The human stood alone in a void of broken data and fading light. The energy core was shattered, its glow reduced to weak flickers. The system was dying. The cadet stared in disbelief. "It's still there," a cadet said. "How?" The human should not have survived the system collapse. Nothing inside a simulation ever did. The human dropped to one knee. Its body shook with exhaustion. Blood drifted in slow motion around it as gravity failed inside the collapsing program. Yet the human lifted its head and smiled again. This time the smile wasn't calm. It was tired. The system tried to end the simulation. Termination protocol engaged. The words flashed across every screen in the Academy. Power surged through the building. The walls groaned. Somewhere deep below, generators screamed under impossible strain. The cadets felt the heat rise. "What's happening?" one cried. Varric spoke fast. "The simulation fed on real energy to keep up with the human. Now it's trying to shut down safely, but it doesn't have enough control left." Another instructor checked a console and went pale. "Energy feedback is moving into the Academy grid." That got everyone's attention. "You mean—" "Yes," the instructor said. "If this continues, the simulation won't just collapse, it will tear through real systems." The human shifted again, forcing itself to stand. Its movements were slow now. Every step looked like it hurt. The cadets watched in silence. The human wasn't fighting anymore. It was waiting. The system unleashed its final response. A surge of energy rushed toward the human, not as an attack, but as a shutdown wave meant to erase everything inside the simulation. The human looked up as the energy closed in. And then, something unexpected happened. The human raised both hands, not in surrender, in control. The cadets leaned forward. The simulation froze. Data streams stopped moving. The shutdown wave stalled in midair, trembling like a living thing. "How is it doing that?" someone whispered. Varric's voice was quiet. "Humans don't just react to systems, they push against them." The human took a deep breath. Its chest rose and fell slowly, painfully. Then it spoke. No sound reached the cadet's ears, but text appeared across the screen, translated automatically by the system. "End it." The command did not come from the system, it came from the human. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the simulation obeyed. The battlefield collapsed inward, folding into itself like burning paper. Data unraveled, light vanished, the shutdown wave dissolved. The void went completely black. The Academy shook one last time.
Then, silence. Emergency lights snapped on across the observation hall. Systems rebooted one by one. Power stabilized. The cadets slowly stood, shaken and quiet. The screen stayed dark. "Is it over?" a cadet asked. Varric stared at the empty display. "The simulation is finished." "But the human—" Before Varric could answer, the screen flickered. A final image appeared. The human lay on the ground, barely moving. The battlefield was gone. Only darkness surrounded it. The human looked straight into the camera, into the academy, into the cadets watching. The text appeared again. "This is why." Then the image vanished. The screen went dead. No reboot followed. The room stayed silent for a long time. Finally, one cadet spoke. Did it escape?" Varric shook his head. "No, the simulation is gone. The human is gone." "Then why do I feel like it's still watching us?" Varric didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked around the room, at the broken lights, the cracked walls, the terrified cadets. "This," he said, "is why humans are forbidden." "Because they're unstoppable?" a cadet asked. "No," Varric replied, "because they take responsibility." The cadets looked at him in confusion. When the system lost control, the human didn't try to win, it didn't try to escape. It ended the threat, even knowing it wouldn't survive. He paused. That is something no simulation can prepare for. Outside the observation hall, alarms echoed through the academy. Emergency crews rushed to contain damage. Entire training wings were shut down. The cost would be measured for years. Varric turned to the cadets. "You were meant to learn tactics today. Instead, you learned truth." No one spoke. Varric finished quietly. "Humans don't break simulations because they are violent. They break them because they understand sacrifice." And somewhere deep in the Academy's broken systems, a single corrupted data fragment remained, locked, unreadable, and marked with one final warning: human interaction, never repeat.
The Academy never fully returned to normal. Days passed, but the damage remained. Entire sections of the combat wing stayed sealed behind warning barriers. Instructors spoke in lower voices. Cadets moved more carefully, as if the walls themselves might remember what had happened. The simulation chamber was gone. Not shut down, not repaired. Gone. The system core had burned itself into an empty shell, melted circuits frozen in place like a scar. No one dared touch it. The official report listed the incident as a catastrophic system failure. No one who witnessed it believed that. The cadets gathered one final time in the lecture hall. No screens activated, no simulations loaded, just rows of silent students and a single instructor standing before them. Instructor Varric looked different now, not weaker, heavier. "You will not speak of what you saw," he said calmly. "Not outside this room, not to other academies, not even to your families." A cadet raised a shaking hand. "Why?" "Because knowledge like this changes how wars begin," Varric replied, "and how they end." The cadets remembered the human, the blood, the smile, the words, "This is why." Varric paced slowly. "You were trained to believe combat is about balance, control, fair outcomes." He stopped. "Humans do not believe that." He activated a small display, not a simulation, but a simple image. A human city in ruins, civilians helping each other from rubble, soldiers standing guard, wounded but alert. Humans come from a world where survival is never guaranteed. They do not ask if a fight is fair, they ask if someone must live. A cadet swallowed. "So they banned humans because they're too dangerous?" Varric shook his head. "No, they banned humans because they are too committed."
The cadets leaned in. When humans enter combat, Varric continued, they don't fight to score points. They don't fight to impress. They fight because something precious is behind them. He looked around the room, and when something precious is behind you, there are no limits. Silence filled the hall. Another cadet spoke quietly. The human could have escaped. Yes, Varric said, but it didn't. Why? Varric's eyes softened. Because humans don't measure victory by survival alone. He paused. They measure it by what they protect. The Academy Council released a final directive that week. All human combat profiles permanently sealed. All simulations, hard limiters restored. All references classified. The ban was no longer questioned. Across the Academy network, training doctrine changed. Cadets were taught avoidance strategies, de-escalation, retreat scenarios. One lesson was added to every combat course, written in plain language. If humans are present, do not engage. Years later, those cadets became officers. Some commanded fleets, others defended borders. A few stood at the edge of war zones where human forces operated nearby. Whenever human ships appeared on scanners, alien commanders hesitated. Not from fear, from respect. They remembered the lesson, that humans did not break systems because they wanted to. They broke systems because systems failed to understand them. Far from the Academy, deep within a sealed archive, a single fragment of corrupted data still existed. No one could delete it, no one could read it. But sometimes, late at night, technicians swore they heard a faint sound from the archive servers. A slow, steady rhythm. Like breathing. Instructor Varric retired not long after. On his final day, a cadet asked him one last question. If humans are so dangerous, why didn't they conquer the galaxy? Varric smiled sadly. Because conquest isn't their goal. What is? Varric looked up at the stars visible through the Academy dome. To make sure someone survives long enough to see tomorrow. The cadet thought of the human in the simulation, bleeding, standing, ending the threat. Not to win, but to stop the damage. The cadet understood then. Humans were forbidden not because they were monsters, but because they were the ones who would step forward when no one else would. And no simulation, no matter how advanced, could ever truly prepare for that.